So, again, we are discussing this week figurative language in the Stormlight archives. I actually finished the first book on a car ride. I was reading it out loud to Mom. I'll be starting the second book. So this is basically from chapter 56 all the way to the end of the book. And in 56, we start with Dalinar when he was killing the Parshendi in order to go rescue Sadeas after he saw him get knocked down. And it is a simile, repetition, and a metaphor. So the quote is, "He was like a tempest, slashing through legs, torsos, arms, necks, killing, killing, killing. He was a maelstrom of death and steel."
Yep, that's a pretty good description of what he was doing to the Parshendi. And I think further on it talks about how the bodies were piling up as he's getting to Sadeas to help him.
Mm-hmm. And another thing, this is right after this, so technically it's on the next page or something, but I wanted to include it as part of this discussion, is the idiom, Dalinar reacting to killing the Parshendi. After he turned around, he goes, "Blood of my fathers," Dalinar thought. Did I do that? As he just sees just a path of dead Parshendi bodies just sliced through the ranks.
Because he's killing them with a shard blade.
Mm-hmm.
And that shard blade doesn't damage the bodies.
No blood, but still just burned out eyes.
Yes, just these terrifying burned out eyes.
Next one we have is Kaladin reacting to Dunny's death. He was one of the first bridgemen after Teft and Rock to become his friend. And this is a metaphor and a simile. This is him kind of thinking about it afterwards. "We're nothing more than pouches to carry blood. When we die, rain it down on the stones like a high storm floods. Until only I remain. I always remain."
Yeah. So that's a really strong picture that he's painting of how all of the soldiers around him, from the start of him being a soldier, everybody seems to die. And yet he doesn't. Why is he special? Why does he remain?
He believed that it was a curse, that the Almighty had cursed him so that he was doomed to forever, have everyone around him die, but his curse was to continue to live.
Yes, and, because he would love these people. All he's trying to do is just help them. If I can just keep them alive, everything will be okay. And then slowly, one by one, they're dying.
Next, we have a metaphor, which is Kaladin on the first run towards the tower, where Dalinar and Sadeas are fighting. Kaladin danced with the wind, arrows streaming around him, passing close, nearly kissing him with their paint scrackle bark fletching.
Kaladin is wearing the armor that they have pried off of the Parshendi's dead.
That they found in the chasms, because they noticed that whenever you were to move or alter the dead Parshendi, both the Parshman and the Parshendi get very, very upset.
Yes.
So Kaladin decided, with his new understanding of his ability to absorb Stormlight and use it to, dodge and draw things around to specific points around him, he decided that he'd be best used as sort of bait to keep them from firing on the other bridgemen by getting them to fire on him because they'd be angry at him, and it worked.
Yeah, so he's dancing around and they're all shooting at him, and he's using his Stormlight abilities to draw the arrows toward him, but
towards his shield instead of towards his face or, the parts of him that are exposed. Next, this is when Kaladin, later on at his second run toward the bridge after Sadeas had basically betrayed Dalinar. They had both decided to do a joint plateau assault, but Sadeas betrayed him and left with all his forces and took the bridges away from him, leaving him stranded on the plateau to be killed by the Parshendi. And Kaladin and his bridge team decide to go back and save Dalinar, and he is running forward towards the Parshendi, and he realizes that the Parshendis, the males, have gems, which have been kind of carved and woven into their beards, and these gems also store Stormlight. So as he leaps over the chasm, using kind of the bridge as a jumping off point, he draws in the Stormlight into himself. Like the power of salvation itself, like rays of the sunlight from the eyes of the Almighty, Stormlight exploded from those gemstones. It surged through the air, pulled invisible streams like glowing columns of luminescent smoke, twisting and turning and spiraling like tiny funnel clouds until they slammed into him, and the storm came to life again.
And what is that?
That one was a simile and vivid imagery, because at the first it says, like the power of salvation itself, and then basically the rest of that is just vivid imagery of just describing the Stormlight as it on its journey towards Kaladin.
Yeah, and how it invigorates his body and
makes him feel like, I remember one of the other lines when he first kind of absorbs Stormlight, makes him feel like there's a storm kind of flowing through his veins, just that power of electricity and force and power. Yeah. You've sat inside during a storm and you can just feel like, oh wow, outside is like, whew. Next I have simile. It says after the whole battle, then Dalinar talks to Sadeas and does whatever, and then he decides, well, I just had a near-death experience, time to go talk to my nephew, and he decides to prove to his nephew that he would not want to kill him by attempting to kill him. He has a shard plate on, and he has placed his hand on his nephew's chest, Elokar, the king, and then says, "If I push," Dalinar said, "you die. Your ribs crack like twigs, your heart is smashed like a grape."
And he's a little bit more to that. So he's telling him that he's not happy with how he's been running the kingdom. That he needs to pay more attention to governing the kingdom and less attention to...
He's so paranoid, he faked his own assassination attempt by half-cutting the strap in the beginning, almost causing his own actual death, and inadvertently framing Dalinar because they weren't taking his suspicions seriously.
That's right. And so that paranoia has gotten in the way of him ruling the kingdom, and Dalinar is like, I'm done with this, you need to be the king. And on his way in, he talks to the guards, and what does he say to them, do you remember?
He'd asked Adolin, his son, to make sure that the guards guarding the king's chambers were his own men. However, he then uses this to advantage by saying, hey, do not come into the room, even if the king says that there's an assassination in the king's chambers. So Dalinar has basically set up the perfect way to kill Elokar. And he's like, Elokar, you really don't trust me? You basically framed me, and seriously, dude, if I wanted to kill you, I'd do it right now, but I'm not going to, so start trusting me.
Yep. And the next part after that, he says, oh, and by the way, I'm dating your mom. Not necessarily in those words.
And then next was when Shallan was begging Yasna to take her back after discovering, hey, wait a minute, Yasna, you've been using a fake soulcaster this whole time. You can soulcast stuff without it. I saw you soulcast it when I knew you had the broken soulcaster because I gave it to you. You didn't even notice. And I accidentally soulcast without touching a soulcaster. So, what's up? Please keep training me. Please.
That's right, yes.
That's the best summary of that I can give.
That is a good summary of it.
So this is a metaphor when even after Shallan is revealed, hey, I can do it too, Yasna's still yeah, but you, stole from me. That's a betrayal of trust. I can't just, let you back here. And she's begging her, and she says, you've opened a box full of storms in me. I made a mistake. I'll make more. I need you.
Yeah, so there has been a lot that's gone on, and Shallan is the first time away from home.
Oh, yeah, and Shallan murdered her dad?
Yes. So Shallan was such a super sheltered girl.
She's the youngest child and
the only girl. And that was a big deal. So there's a lot more about that interaction and that family dynamic that you learn about in the second and third books.
Mm-hmm. I could kind of tell.
She's like, I know I messed up. I'm going to mess up again. That doesn't mean I don't need your guidance.
And then, last but by definitely no means least, we return to Seth's son Valeno. I think that's his name, his full name.
Zeth.
The assassin in white from the very beginning of the book. We return to him multiple times, but now we have, as he is, he had found a new master and was given a list of people, hey, go murder them, and had specific ways to kill them, try to kill as many people on this one, try to keep it as quiet as possible on this one, And this is him talking about himself, he's thinking to himself, a symbolism and a metaphor. He felt his every step should leave a bloody footprint. The massacres he'd committed these months, working for his hidden master. He could hear the dead scream every time he closed his eyes. They grated against his soul, wearing it to nothing, haunting him, consuming him. And I asked you about this quote a little bit before we started recording, and we kind of came to the mutual agreement that we're pretty sure Seth literally does hear the screams of the dead, so that's not the metaphor part.
And so it's talking about how to control him, they have a stone that whoever holds that stone is his master.
He must do whatever they say, and there are only a few rules he must follow, one of which is that he cannot kill himself. And he desperately wishes to kill himself just to end it, or for someone to kill him.
Yes.
He found himself getting angry at the victims for not being strong enough to kill him because he just wants it to stop.
He wants it to end.
He talks to his master and he mentions how, like, his punishment is that he has to kill and he has to live with the killings.
And that's the way he sees it. He sees it as murders, not as, like, fighting a war and deaths are going to happen. No, he sees it as I've murdered all these hundreds, maybe thousands of people.
He's killed a lot of people so far. Like, in one night, you killed at least 50 to 100.
Yep, so he's definitely feeling the weight of the requirements of his society on him.